Nuclear weapons are one of the biggest threats to humanity, and yet almost every country in the world is working hard on making stronger nuclear bombs. But instead of talking about how destructive these weapons are for the world, we'll simply go into the details of how nuclear bombs work. Let's dive into the mechanism and science behind these weapons, and discuss the types of nuclear bombs as well. Let's dive right into it. First up, the science behind nuclear bombs. It wasn't until 1945 that the world got to know about nuclear weapons. This was when the detonation of the first ever nuclear weapon happened at the Trinity test site in New Mexico. The concept was alien to most people. Apart from scientists and science majors, no one knew how dangerous this thing was. Since 1945, the global nuclear stockpile has only increased, and that's how all of us entered the atomic age. Even though these weapons are mass destructive, the science behind them is relatively small. Even if you aren't a science person, you must already know that all matter is composed of atoms. Each atom further consists of three particles, i.e. the proton, the electron, and neutron. Two of these three particles play a significant role in the nuclear explosion. All atoms also have a nucleus in their center, while the neutrons and protons are tightly bound with the core. When the nucleus breaks apart, the combining nuclei, meaning the neutrons and protons, create a large amount of energy. Just like that, the nuclear bombs use this exact science on a massive level, which, as a result, creates unimaginably high amounts of energy. But this energy is not for the development of the world. Instead, it can wipe off a whole city. Next, we have the types of nuclear weapons. You might not know, but there are two different types of nuclear bombs. The basic science behind these weapons remains almost the same. However, some differences make them fall in different categories. The two types of nuclear bombs are atomic bombs and hydrogen bombs. The atomic bomb totally relies on fission reactions. However, hydrogen bombs rely on a combination of fission and fusion. You must be wondering what alien language we're speaking right now. Don't worry, let us explain it a little bit more. First, we have nuclear fission. Nuclear fission is the process that's primarily used in nuclear reactors. In this process, the heavier atoms are broken down into smaller atoms, starting the nuclear chain reaction. This nuclear chain reaction helps in producing large amounts of energy. Atomic bombs use this process by firing a neutron in the nucleus of a fissile atom, such as uranium-235. When done, the uranium atom splits into two atoms, which are then called fissile fragments. After splitting in two, the nuclear chain reaction begins automatically by hitting the nuclei, resulting in an atomic explosion. Little Boy was the first ever nuclear weapon used in the war, and it also used the same process of fission to create the explosion. Next, we have nuclear fusion. Hydrogen bombs use the combination of nuclear fission and fusion. We already explained what fission is, however, the process of fusion helps amplify fission, and that's how an even bigger and more destructive explosion is accomplished. Fusion is actually completely opposite of what happens in fission. As the name represents, fusion is a process where two things fuse into each other. Simply put, instead of splitting an atom in two, fusion involves the putting together of two atoms. The fun thing about this process is that the sun also uses the same process that helps it keep burning. And now for the history of nuclear weapons and why they were invented in the first place. The story of nuclear weapons is older than most people think. In 1898, Marie Curie and Pierre became the first scientists to discover that pitchblende, now known as uraninite, consisted of radium that could emit large amounts of energy. This was when other scientists were convinced that the elements they considered useless might have energy stored in them that needed to be harnessed. After this, the research didn't have any development until 1934, when Enrico Fermi and Szilard joined hands and invented the first ever working nuclear reactor. The hype was real, and the study of atomic energy was the talk of the town. Fast forward to 1938. Two German scientists, Fritz Strassmann and Otto Hahn, discovered something amazing. They reported that the splitting of the nucleus of an atom could create a monumental amount of energy. The word got out, and Franklin D. Roosevelt, the then US president, got worried that this newfound energy might give the Germans a free pass to create a superweapon, which of course wasn't a good thing. And that's how the race to develop the superweapon started. Roosevelt ordered the US scientists to create one for their country before Germany did. And with the arrival of World War II, the efforts to make the country a nuclear power were doubled. It took them 4 years, and in 1945 the US tested their first nuclear bomb. In short, the purpose of creating nuclear weapons was to make sure that the country that has them gets to have the upper hand in almost every matter, especially war. No one was sure about the effects of this bomb until they actually tested it. Reports say that the blast had left the US Army stunned, and even after decades, the area where they tested the bomb has background radiation that is 10 times more than the normal level. Next, the US didn't wait wait long to use this deadly technology. Just a month after the US had tested its nuclear bomb, the country used the technology in the most horrific way possible. What did they do? You might already know it, but let us remind you what happened once again. At the time, World War II was at the end of its days. However, Japan kept refusing to surrender. In order to get rid of this problematic situation, the newly instated President Harry S. Truman ordered the worst of all, the atomic bombing of the Japanese city of Hiroshima. With this deadly bombing of Japan, everything about nuclear weapons changed. Say it is the perception people had about it or the fear it inflicted in everyone's heart. Over 80,000 Japanese people died instantly after the US Army dropped Little Boy on them. 3 days later, they dropped the second nuclear bomb on Nagasaki, and 5 days after this, Japan surrendered and World War II came to an end. And just so you know, the US scientists weren't the only ones studying and developing new nuclear weapons. The Soviets were also in the same run, and that's why they succeeded in becoming the second nuclear power of the world. Now, for the race to make the most destructive nuclear bomb. Who won? It's hard to name a winner because we're in a time when every country is trying to make it big. But let's just compare the US, the Soviets, and their nuclear projects. The first bomb that the US dropped on Hiroshima was about 15 kilotons, and the second one weighed about 10 megatons. But this was only the beginning because the next nuclear bomb that the Soviets made was 57 megatons. That's about 3,800 times more powerful than the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. However, the problem with this bomb was that it didn't prove to be as effective as dropping several smaller nuclear bombs at once. And that's why none of the two countries tried to build a bigger bomb. This is why Tsar Bomba remains the largest bomb ever created. Both of these countries still spend a major part of their revenue on making weapons, both nuclear and non-nuclear ones. So, is it all worth it? Even though the discovery of nuclear energy was a success in the world of science, it turned out to be a nightmare for the world. Not only the humans, but also the wildlife and the climate conditions of the globe are threatened by this superweapon. The harm isn't only caused by the explosions and radiations. Even the firestorms are a threat to the existence of human beings on this planet. As if nuclear weapons weren't enough of a danger. When Little Boy destroyed Hiroshima, the fire caused by the blast spread around due to the hot air that formed a hurricane-like structure. This hurricane of fire was something that was as terrible as the bomb blast itself and killed thousands of people. Apart from this, another theory about the damage that nuclear testing may cause is quite famous among scientists and is called the nuclear winter. This theory claims that if the limit of bombing crosses, hundreds and thousands of firestorms will rush through the Earth. With this, tons and tons of dust and other precipitants will rise to the sky, leaving the whole northern hemisphere in darkness. No light means no sun, right? This means the temperature will fluctuate, and most of the vegetation, animals, and even the buildings will be destroyed due to the cold temperatures. The ones who will survive will have to make their way through the snow and cold temperature. But if this theory ends up being true, will any of us be able to survive the cold and darkness? Because we really doubt that. For now, this is it, fam. Ask away any questions about this video or related topic in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We'll be back with more amazing videos soon. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy. Goodbye.